Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Geek Addicts, the show that I still don't know how to start the episodes with. This is once again Bill, and this is Matt. How you doing, Matt?
I feel fine.
I don't. I have a cold again.
Yeah.
Oh man. How's your week been, though? Otherwise,
It's been all right. Work's been crazy. They're starting to cut hours again, which really sucks before Christmas, but
yeah.
yeah, making it work.
No, we've been pretty busy because we're always busy. But
Yeah. Aside from
uh,
that, though, I rewatched the Scott Pilgrim movie, and I rewatched the first season of Seven Deadly Sins. I'm gonna start catching up with that because I haven't watched it since it first came out. So
nice.
now there's like 5 seasons. So I'm like, all right, it's a good time to catch up.
Yeah, I've been alternating between. So I've been watching Rurouni Kenshin still. I just got to the Kyoto arc right at this part. Right when Kenshin leaves and Karu cries a lot. Karu cries a lot in this anime, I noticed.
Yeah, I warned you that she gets a little annoying with that.
Yeah.
She's definitely one of the least likable characters for that reason. But
yeah, I did order the OVAs as well, so those hopefully will be coming in. Unfortunately, the one I'm least interested in is the one that came first. So I was like, great.
Which one?
Reflections.
Oh yeah, that's the only little bit of like semi coverage for that final arc that I've mentioned.
Yeah, isn't like it's like considered not even canon, right? Because it just changes a bunch of shit for no reason.
Yeah, it's not canon. Like I'll just tell you a couple of things because it's stupid anyway. But like it's like the far future, and it shows like Kenshin's kid, and he's training with Kenshin's old master, and Yahiko ended up with the reverse blade sword, but like Kenshin has like this he like developed like dementia pretty much, but he and Sanosuke are at war or something, and but it's not dementia, it's like I don't know, maybe it's syphilis, I don't fucking know, because Kaoru like bangs him and then catches it, and that's like a whole thing. It's really stupid. But it shows like little bits. It shows like little animated scenes of like stuff that's happened, and then it shows little bits of like of that arc that they never animated. So that's like that's pretty much how I know anything about that final arc is from that OVA.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's really weird.
All I read about it was people didn't like it because like Kenshin's son is like a dick for no reason, but
yeah, he like hates his dad. It's like he's got like Boruto syndrome.
Like every fucking anime kid, it seems like.
Anytime a main character has a kid, the kid always ends up hating him.
See, that's like the one refreshing thing about Yashahime. They just didn't know who their parents were.
Yeah, that's definitely a plus side when you look at all these other ones.
Yeah. Other than that, though, I've been playing the Mario and Luigi RPG remake. It's good.
Oh, nice. Cool. I've been meaning to pick that up at some point. I just, with Christmas and everything, I kind of have to pinch my pennies where I can. But
yeah,
I will end up getting it probably probably right after Christmas when all those digital deals are going on.
No, it's worth it. It's like the most like 1-to-1 remake I think I've played in a long time.
That's pretty cool. I've pretty much been exclusively playing Scott Pilgrim this week, the game, to prepare.
Yeah. If people didn't notice, our topic for this episode is Scott Pilgrim.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess like to jump into it. What was your first introduction to Scott Pilgrim when I gave you the books or?
No, I saw the movie. It was a few years after it came out. I think it was like 2013 or so that I saw it. I only remember because it was like during this 6-month period when I was rooming with a couple buddies, that I watched it for the first time. And I remember really liking it. And then I've seen it a bunch of times since then. And then I think I played the game with you before you loaned me the comics. So I think the comics were like the most recent thing aside from the new show that I've touched on. At some point, I'd like to get them again, get them myself because I'd like to read them again.
Yeah. So I remember like when the movie was coming out, like there was ads for it like all over the place because like they were hyping this movie up, which is kind of sad considering nobody went to go see it.
Yeah.
Like most Edgar Wright films.
I didn't even know it existed until my roommates just happened to put it on that day.
I saw the trailers all the time, but it was like one of those movies. So it came out. Should have done some research before we started recording. I'm
Is that
this
2010?
week. 2010. Yeah, so this came out 2010. I didn't have a license or income, so I had no way of going to go see it at the time.
Yeah.
Despite it looking pretty interesting, I remember Comedy Central would run like trailers for it like nonstop.
That seems up Comedy Central's alley.
Yeah, it was like in between South Park episodes. It would be like Scott Pilgrim versus the World, and it'd be like, okay. And I didn't even realize it was based off of a comic series. I just thought it was just another film that was coming out that looked vaguely interesting. And I don't think I ended up seeing the film until like 2016 when I got it, the Blu-ray release.
Oh yeah.
But I will say it is a good movie, even though it is very different from the source material in a lot of ways.
In a lot of ways, especially like character wise, but I'd say overall they did after I read the comics, I was like really impressed with how much the movie touched on.
Well, the thing about the movie is it was being made while the comics were still being
They did a pretty good job trying to. Oh, was it?
Yeah, it was so it was, I think it was around like when book 4 was, they were only up to like book 4, or I believe when the movie began production.
Oh, okay.
And during that's why like a lot of things kind of it's pretty faithful up until around like the midpoint. Then it kind of like branches off a little bit into different ways. That's actually one of the reasons why the main antagonist of the series, Gideon, looks the way he does, because he was actually based off of his actor in a lot of ways.
Huh. That's interesting.
Yeah, it was an interesting thing I read, because I guess Brian Lee O'Malley, the author and artist for the series, was like heavily involved during why my Siri just came on. That's weird. He was like heavily involved during the production of the film. He's generally, from what I've read, he's been pretty involved with every aspect of the series, like through all of its media, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure. It's always good when the original creator is involved with stuff like that. But
anyways, go on.
I think we're lagging a little bit.
I think we are a little, like, slightly.
Yeah, we'll work it out.
Okay.
So you said you didn't see it until like 2016?
Yeah, I didn't see the film until after I read the books.
Okay, I didn't even know. I don't even think I knew there was comics until you told me.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, I noticed there was like 2 subsets of fans of Scott Pilgrim. There was the fans that read the books exclusively, and then there was the fans that only saw the movie. And it was a bit of an interesting. It was an interesting shift when you go from one medium to the other, because I read the books, and then actually I played the game first. Believe it or not, now that I think about it. Excuse me. Yeah, because like everyone was hyping the game up as like this like really awesome beat 'em up, and I remember it was on sale on PSN back in the day for like $5 at one point. And I was like, sure, why not? And I played it, and I was like, this is really good. And then it got me interested in picking up the graphic novels. And there was only 6 of them, which was very easy to collect for at the time.
Yeah.
And I ended up binging all 6 of them within like a month, because I picked them up sporadically. Like I got the first 3, and then I got the other 3 later on. And I remember just like falling in love with the series. Like, it is such a meta, like so many references to like geek culture and like nerd culture from like the mid 2000s, like late 90s.
Oh yeah, it's so bizarre too. Like there's so much going on. Like especially with the movie. I'm much more familiar with the movie than the comics, because I only went through those the one time when you loaned them to me. But yeah, it's just going off of the movie, at least. Like it was a very bizarrely made movie with the transitions and the way that like the scenes would just shift from one another, like mid conversation, mid sentence. Like it was really cool though. It was a really interesting way of making a movie.
It's cool too, because like the comics also have that weird kind of like shifts, like where they like go from one thing and then all of a sudden just like shift to another thing. A lot of kind of like kind of like blink it or miss it stuff like too will happen where you really have to pay attention to like context clues in the background before you can like really understand like what's good. Like because the plot of this series is very confusing
Yeah.
at first. It makes sense later on, sort of.
Yeah.
It's all relative, really, in the end. Um, I guess the best way to describe the series is essentially it follows the story of the series protagonist Scott Pilgrim, and he is your average adult living in Toronto in a band, and
Mhm.
he meets Ramona Flowers, who he immediately falls head over heels for, despite being in a relationship with a 17-year-old. Enough on that later. Um, and basically,
Yeah.
um, he immediately wants to date her, but she basically reveals if you want to, the only way you can the only way to get a date with her is you have to defeat her 7 evil ex-boyfriends. And literally the entire plot of the series is essentially going from book to book where he faces off against all the evil boyfriends, and they're all the reasonings for like why her Ramona broke up with them. They get pettier and pettier as they go on.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like my favorite is like the twins, where like she just dated both of them at the same time and like cheated on them with each other. It was great.
Yeah. Well, like it's funny, like in the I mean, I don't I mean, I remember bits and pieces from the comics just because I only want it's been 2 years or so since I read them. And it's like you said, it's only a 6 volume series. So like, there's a lot packed into those 6 volumes.
Mm.
Like there's so many different storylines and so many different like little bits of information that get spewed throughout. Like it's hard to remember a lot if you've only read it the one time.
Yeah, it's written the way it's written is actually pretty interesting because it's very manga styled compared to traditional American
Oh,
comics.
extremely.
Like other than like you read it the normal way, not the manga way. You have
What-
left to right, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And it was super jarring for me because it's so manga styled. Reading left to right was so weird.
Yeah, you have to like get used to it, and like once you do, it's perfectly like I'm at a point now reading like because I switch between comics and manga all the time. I'm
Mhm.
at that point now where I can easily just kind of like trick my brain into remembering which way you're supposed to go.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
I don't know. For me, it's kind of like switching between an Xbox controller and a Nintendo controller. It's like, all right, the A and the B are different. The X and the Y are different. I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
Yeah, I think it's just because I read so many American comics before I got into manga that I kind of just like I've just adapted to it, I guess.
Yeah,
Um,
I would have liked to get into American comics, but it's just so hard to, especially when you're older. It's hard to find. I say that like I'm old, 29. But it's hard trying to find a place to start and like knowing really what you're doing with American comics. But that's part of the reason why I like Scott Pilgrim, because it's just a very straightforward, like the 6 volumes. Here's the beginning. Here's the end. Go. It's the same kind of deal as the way manga is set up.
yeah, and I love like the little meta in jokes like within like the series too. Like one of the running jokes is there. So there's a running theme in this series where like there's a bunch of bands and like music references, and all the bands have like the funniest
Mhm.
names. Like Scott's band is like called Sex Bomb, which is I'm pretty sure a reference to the band the Sex Pistols, but also Babam, Mario as like a joke.
Yeah.
Um, which is funny to me. And then like you also get like one of the other rival bands is the Clash at Demon Head, which is a reference to like an NES game from like way
Is it?
back in the day.
There's a lot
Yeah,
of video game references throughout.
I think so. I think Scott's original band back in like high school that we find out about was called like Sonic and Knuckles. Um,
Hmm.
he was in a band called Kid Chameleon at one point.
Mhm.
Just a whole bunch of goofy stuff like that. And
I
like
had forgotten that he was in other bands.
yeah, like there's a lot of the backstory stuff before Sex Bomb, and my favorite part too is the whole joke that Scott kind of sucks at
Yeah.
phase. Like
Oh yeah,
he's
because it
not.
wasn't it a thing that like by the end of the comics they just replaced him with young Neil?
That was in the movie. In the comics, Sex Bomb breaks up after one really bad gig, and Scott breaks his bass in half. And then Steven Stills, which is also a music reference to an actual artist. He just joins another band and doesn't let Scott in because Scott sucks. Because I think Steven Stills was the only one with actual talent.
Also, I know. Yeah, he was the talent.
The talent, as they call him.
They specifically say that when he's introduced. So I know we're not going to be touching too much on the new show just because you haven't seen it yet, but I think it's kind of weird that neither the movie nor the new show touched on the fact that Steven Stills comes out as gay at the end.
Yeah, they don't. Well, the movie I know gets away with that because it was written before that reveal. Because that reveal is very late in the comics.
It's like literally like right at the end. It's just like, yeah, I realized it like halfway through this, but you know, you were kind of doing a lot of stuff, so I didn't want to bring it up. Like,
well, the whole joke is that his ex-girlfriend Julie was such a bitch that she made him gay. Like I think that's the implication that it's supposed to give off. The whole series is like very like surprisingly progressive with like the amount of different characters that are in there. Like the best character in one of the best characters is Scott's roommate Wallace, who is just like the most camp character ever, but that's like kind of his gimmick.
He's the best character in the movie, in my opinion.
Yeah, he's great. Like he just completely dumps on Scott all the time.
Like I like him in the new show and in the comics, but it just something about him, like as Kieran Culkin, like live action in that role is just so perfect.
Yeah. One of my favorite moments in the comic is like when like Scott first takes Ramona to his apartment he shares with Wallace. And she's like amazed that it's actually clean and not a disaster zone. She meets Wallace and Wallace's response is just, "You're way too good for him." Because there's also a lot of people forget, like, well, they don't forget because it's pretty iconic, but at the start of the series, Scott is dating a 17-year-old high school student named Knives Chow. And everyone like gives him shit for it because Scott's like 23, I think.
I think so, yeah.
And one of my favorite reveals at the end of the series is when Scott finds out that Knives apparently had just turned 17 around that point, and it just cuts to an image of Scott with like the caption, "Really sketchy 23-year-old." And it's like, because that's one of my favorite things about Scott is that he's not really a good character. He's kind of a piece of shit, like in reality.
Yeah, for real.
Like none of the characters in this series are really good people, to be honest. Like all of them are incredibly flawed.
Yeah, and like, honestly, like, I mean, she's cool in the comics and in the new show, but like, I don't know, Ramona just didn't seem likable in the movie to me.
Yeah, she didn't really get a lot of development in the movie. She kind of was mostly in the background, which is kind of unfortunate.
It was kind of the same with Kim.
Yeah. Kim is the best character, one of the best characters in the comics, because I love Kim's whole just doesn't give a shit about anything attitude.
Yeah.
He just likes to play drums. That's about it.
Yeah. And then like they like kind of barely skim over the whole like the fact that her and Scott dated earlier on. Like there was a whole other story that like went along with that in the comics, and they just barely touch on it.
Yeah, that's actually a really funny kind of parallel to Ramona is the fact that Scott has his own collection of kind of ex-girlfriends as well.
Yeah.
Which is pretty amusing that the whole joke is that he's not great at relationships at all.
No, apparently neither of them are.
No. And excuse me. It's funny because like the series originally was traditional like black and white like graphic novel manga style. They did later re-release it in color later on, which is the definitive like way to read the books now.
Is that like the hardcover box set?
Yeah, the hardcover books are all in color, which is nice. Although they do kind of ruin. There's a running gag in the series where Ramona like always changes her hair color for no reason. In the books, there's a panel where they make a joke asking if that's her natural hair color, which the whole joke is supposed to be like the pun on the fact that it's in black and white, so you can't tell. In the color version, they had to write an annotation basically saying this joke doesn't make any sense anymore because of the color format. Sorry.
That's awesome.
Yeah, which is really clever. Going back to the game really quick, I wanted to bring up the soundtrack for that game is like way better than it has any right to be.
Oh yeah, for sure.
They got the chiptune pop punk band Anamanaguchi to do like the soundtrack. And for those who don't know, Anamanaguchi is a band that literally uses like hacked NESs and like Game Boys to like make their music sound effects. And that's how they get that epic video game sound.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, they actually have original albums too, and they're like all like bops.
When did the game come out?
So the game originally came out, I want to say 2011, because it was kind of a tie-in to the film in a sense, even though they don't really follow the same plots, because the game is arguably the most faithful medium to the comics in a lot of ways. Because the game is basically a modern interpretation of the game River City Ransom.
Okay.
And it follows a lot of those same stylistic tropes because it's like a beat 'em up where you have to level up and gain experience to like get like better stats, and you can like get like items and stuff. And it's a cool feature, although I will admit the game is brutally hard and not very fun to start unless you're like maxed out.
Or if you're playing with somebody else.
Even with somebody else, it's still pretty brutal. Like a shout out to Ben from the Play Along podcast. Me and him did an episode of Get Wrecked over for their show, and one of my suggestion was the Scott Pilgrim game, and I remember he had a hell of a time, like even like playing with like his partner, just because it was so brutally hard. I taught him the infinite money glitch, or not glitch, the infinite money code, just so he could like max out his stats and basically like make the game playable.
Well, that's the thing is like how I said that I've been playing the game all week. I've really just been playing the same like 2 levels over and over again, just trying, because I started over playing as Kim from level 1 on medium level, and like I really just needed to like I was pretty much just trying to get the money to pay off Scott's late fees so I could get some extra lives, because there was no way I was going to get through the game without extra lives, and like I maxed her out in the process, so she's just automatically max level, and I'm only on like the 3rd level.
Yeah, once you're maxed though, the game is a piece of cake. Like so easy to just blast through.
Yeah, but I was playing with my stepson earlier in the week, and like, we just did like a couple levels together, and he like instantly loved the game. And I saw that like there was still a bunch of Black Friday deals and stuff going on. It was on sale for $5, so he ended up getting it on his Switch.
Oh, it's that game is so well received that like it infamously was actually delisted for like a long time because it disappeared from like the PSN and Xbox Live stores, and like you could not download it anymore for like a long time. Like basically the only way to play it is if you happen to have it still on your PS3 or excuse me, 360. And it was like a long legal battle because I guess Ubisoft lost the rights to the license, and they couldn't like work out a deal despite like Brian Lee O'Malley trying to do everything he could to get the game back out there. And thankfully, like with a couple of years ago, we finally got the game back on pretty much every platform, and it got a physical edition, which is really nice because that basically guarantees it'll be around forever now.
Oh, I didn't know there was a physical version. I would have gotten that.
It was a limited run, so it's not the easiest thing to find, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. Well, it's not. It doesn't take up a whole lot of space anyway, so it's not that big.
No, when I saw they were doing it, I don't really get limited run games usually, but when I saw they were doing that one, I had to have it just because I love that game and I didn't want it to be lost forever again.
The collector in you just couldn't resist.
Yeah, honestly, pretty much.
Yeah.
One thing about that game I love though is how much attention to detail it has, like with like the source material.
Oh yeah, like there's so many little things throughout.
Like one of my favorites is the 3rd boss, which is Todd Ingram. He's the 3rd Evil X, and he's the
vegan,
the quote unquote vegan. And he's also the boyfriend of Scott's ex. I can't remember her name. Envy
Yeah.
Adams. And the whole joke is that he actually can play bass and he's actually competent, but he's just a massive dick because I don't know.
Yeah.
But he's a vegan, and in the Scott Pilgrim universe, vegans have superpowers.
Yeah, which is just hilarious. I love the vegan police. I don't know if
No,
that was that just the movie or was it the comic too?
no, that's everything. Because he cheated on his vegan diet and had gelato, which has eggs in it.
Yeah. And a plate the plate of chicken parm was like, chicken is a vegan?
Yeah. I love it's just complete like what? Like, what do you mean?
This is too funny.
But like my favorite part about the boss fight in the game is it's an Akira reference, which is really funny to me for whatever reason.
Is it?
Yeah, he does like the arm cannon, like vegetable gun thing. That's like a reference to like the scene where Tetsuo transforms into the blob monster at the end of Akira.
Oh no shit.
But also when you finish that fight, you get an extra life, which is a reference to the comics where Scott gets an extra life arbitrarily after that fight, and it actually counts as an extra life in game, which is pretty fun.
That's pretty cool.
There's stuff like that. I enjoyed everything about the game. Honestly, I think the game actually helped popularize the series in a lot of ways.
Oh, I can see that. I mean, it's I don't know what the normal retail price for it is, but I mean, altogether, it's a pretty cheap game. It's competent. It's smooth. It's got a good soundtrack. It's got a lot of replayability with the extra characters and the different levels, and
and plus
it's solid. It's solid all around.
Plus, it has like online modes you can play, like all sorts of different, all sorts of characters. Different. There's like an endless zombie horde mode.
Which I haven't even messed with any of that stuff. I've only been playing like the base game stuff.
Yeah. I didn't realize that Scott Pilgrim actually is pretty old. It came out in 2004.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
I guess that would make sense because there's like video rental stores and shit.
Yeah. Because the first volume was 2004 and the final was 2010.
Mm-hmm.
Which actually makes a lot of sense because the film came out in 2010, which it would have had to have been in production before the final volume came out.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So, excuse me. God, this cold is brutal.
Yikes. 'Tis the season.
Yeah, it really is. So going back to the movie now, I remember when it first came out, there was a lot of people who were they questioned the casting choices quite a bit.
I think the casting is amazing. I love the cast.
In hindsight, it definitely is. I remember at the time, people were I think it just happened to be because it was right around the time Superbad came out, and people were just tired of Michael Cera.
Really? Because he was just getting started at that point.
Yeah, people were tired of him by then, like pretty quick. Because he got typecast really bad because he was always playing like awkward like teenagers in like all the movies he was in. But
yeah,
I thought Michael Cera did an amazing job. Mary Elizabeth Winstead was great. Like pretty much Chris Evans is in this fucking movie. Like
I had a fucking Captain America.
was he Captain America by that point? I don't remember when the first one came out.
I don't think so. No. I see. I'm super behind on the Marvel movies, and I did not watch them as they came out. So
yeah, I didn't either.
I don't know what order they came out in. I only know that Iron Man and Iron Man 2 was first. So
it was like a year before he was Captain America. Okay,
that makes sense. And then is it Brie Larson that's Captain Marvel?
Yeah, she's Captain Marvel, and she was Envy.
Yeah. And then also, what was it? And then obviously Kieran Culkin as Wallace, which I actually just found out recently that he was the bedwetting cousin in Home Alone.
Yep.
I didn't even know that. I didn't even know that that was him. I was watching Home Alone the other day with my family, and my wife just was like, "Oh yeah, that kid's actually Macaulay Culkin's brother." I'm like, "Huh? I wonder if that's Wallace." And I looked it up. And then, like, when I actually looked at him, like, as a little kid, I'm like, holy shit, I do see him in there. Like,
there's also Brandon Routh was Todd Ingram. He was literally Superman.
Was he Superman?
The Superman Returns, the one movie before Man of Steel.
Oh wow, I'd say I remember watching the old Superman movies, and that's about it.
Those are the good ones. Returns wasn't very good.
But I know him as was it the Atom in the Arrowverse?
Yes, I believe so.
I think that was his superhero name.
Also, Johnny Simmons was young Neil, and I remember him specifically because he was in that fucking wonderful film Jennifer's Body. If anyone who's seen it.
Oh yeah, that's that instant classic.
It's great when you're drunk. Like that's like literally the only moment that's worth watching.
Yeah, I bet.
No offense to people that like that movie. I know it's a cult hit, but
I mean, so is Scott Pilgrim. So
true, very true. Yeah, there's a ton of, oh yeah, Anna Kendrick was in this film too as Stacy Pilgrim.
Yeah, that was such a weird, like when I realized, because I don't know, maybe I feel like she blew up after this movie is when she really started getting popular.
Well, I remember I was watching
this is the movie that made her popular, but like I didn't notice her until afterwards.
See, I remember watching this movie with Alex, and she popped up on screen, and Alex was like, "Hey, like, wow, Anna Kendrick's in this," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, she's in everything now."
Yeah, and then what was I don't remember her name, but the chick who plays Roxy.
Oh, that's
she's a big in voice work. I was looking up a lot of these actors earlier.
May Whitman.
Yeah, she played Katara in Avatar.
Yep.
She played Tinkerbell in a bunch of stuff. She played Yuffie, the FF7 character Yuffie, but in Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah, which is weird because in Advent Children she was voiced by Kim Possible. I remember that.
It's so weird.
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, the casting was great though, and that's the other thing that's amazing.
Yeah, the casting choices for this movie was amazing.
Well, actually, I wanted to bring up the Anna Kendrick thing again. One of the funniest coincidences there is the fact that she plays Stacy Pilgrim, Scott's younger sister, despite the fact that Anna Kendrick was significantly older than Michael Cera at the time.
Yeah,
which is just kind of funny thing that you notice later on.
And I think in the movie she calls him little brother.
She does that in the books too, but that's more of an insult because she's mentally more mature.
That makes sense.
Because I think she's like 17 as well.
I think she's supposed to be 19.
19, 18 maybe.
Something like that.
She's drinking alcohol, but also Canada has different laws about that. So because the whole series takes place in Canada, so
yeah, in the mysterious land of Toronto, Canada.
Yes. I mean, for all we know, it is like that up there.
Oh, the other kind of like secret star that's in this movie. You know, Bill Hader was the little narrator voice.
Yeah, I did know that.
I just found that out. I had no clue.
Yeah, it's just funny to me how like to me the most like baffling thing is they got all of them back for the anime.
Yeah,
which couldn't have been cheap. I can't say
for real.
Either that or they really like the project.
I can imagine. Yeah, I apologize if I keep talking over you or vice versa. We're getting a little bit of lag here. I just want to point that out.
Yeah,
just in case it shows in the episode.
I'm kind of trying to pace myself out if it happens so it doesn't sound too awkward, but this one might be a little funky sounding, but that's par for the course for us.
Yeah.
So. we haven't had a visit from our friend the roadster going by in the cul-de-sac yet, so or not the roundabout.
Yeah. Well, I'm in a different room today than I usually am, so I'm a little bit further away from the road, but not that much.
That's my favorite part about recording it. Some of the episodes is just the eventual like you get that goes by.
Yeah, people are fucking stupid on this road. It's there's this I don't know. Well, no, you wouldn't see it. You don't live here anymore. But there's a house near the mall.
Yep.
And somebody had put like a cardboard cutout of a dog at the end of their road or at the end of their lawn, and it's like really realistic cutout.
Yep.
So like, there's been a bunch of times where people like will be coming up super fast and they'll slow down, and I've been like super tempted to do that, but with like a cutout of a kid and just stick it on the side of the road so people would stop speeding down this road.
I know. It's crazy. I actually off topic, but I witnessed a fucking car accident today that was fucking bad.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, it was right in front of me.
Jeez.
Guy merged over and didn't look and like went right into the guy in front of me, and I like had to like slam the brake and get around as fast as possible. It was like it was one of those moments where I was like, if I was a little bit farther ahead, that would have been me.
People are nuts on the road this time of year.
Well, I have to go directly through Springfield, like right by the MGM, and like
Oof.
it is a fucking hellhole there. Like every day, like there is. I always joke about car crashes there, but there is legit a car crash in that area once a week, sometimes multiple times. It's crazy.
I believe it. I believe it.
That was the closest I've ever been to one, though. I was like, holy shit.
Oh, there was this one time where I think my wife's cousin and her husband were down for a visit at one point. We were going down to Savers because they live in Maine, so they don't have Savers up there. And we were like going to pull in, and I don't know what happened because I wasn't paying full attention until I actually saw it happen. But two trucks, like one of them was like turning, and the other one just either didn't notice or didn't care, and he went forward anyway, and they collided. And I shit you not, the entire front axle of this truck got launched across the road.
Jesus.
Like it was ridiculous. Nobody was hurt, luckily, but like it's like, damn, you must have hit it just right because it launched. Like,
yeah, I can believe it. Going back to Scott Pilgrim, though, now, like, I will say, like, one thing that this series is surprisingly good about, despite the fact that the fights are always kind of a joke, is like the fight choreography that happens both in like the comics, but even in the movie as well.
oh yeah, and I have to wonder because I know they make the joke about the stunt doubles and stuff when he's fighting Chris Evans there, but like when Michael Cera is going through all these fight scenes, it doesn't look like it's a stunt double. It looks like he's doing it himself. Do you know if he did his own stunts for that movie or?
I don't know personally. I wouldn't be surprised if he did because I'm pretty sure they were all mostly practically done. Like there was nothing like super crazy, like out of the ordinary.
I gotcha.
I like the joke that Scott's like the best fighter in Toronto, though. Like that they keep bringing up. It's
well,
like,
I love the whole like backstory with him and Kim about how he like fought off like this huge gang of people for her and stuff. Like,
and then you find out later on it was just one guy, and Scott just kind of beat him up for his lunch money, basically. Because Scott's another key to this thing is Scott's kind of like the Joker. He's a very unreliable narrator,
mm-hmm.
and a lot of the things he says in like book 1 later get revealed in book 6 didn't actually happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like his whole like massive breakup with Envy apparently wasn't nearly as like dramatic as he makes it out to be. It was more just like he was annoying.
Well, I mean, I won't go into too much detail, but that definitely reflects a lot in the new show, the anime, which is funny too because I like if it weren't for the opening theme song, I wouldn't have known it was an anime because it looks just like the comics.
Yeah, it's got kind of like completely different show, but art style wise, it's very like panty and stocking kind of looking.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's got that very American style, which I mean fits because I mean it's based off of an American work. I believe Brian Lee O'Malley is involved with the writing of the episodes as well.
That would make sense in a lot of ways. I was wondering about that too. You'll see when you watch it, but like there's a lot of stuff that got thrown in that wasn't in the comics, and I was wondering how much involvement he had with that stuff.
He's directly involved, so
interesting.
He's probably just wanted it to be a new take because we've already seen the books have been out forever. We've already seen one take on it with the game. We've seen the movie take. Might as well try something different.
It's kind of like, I don't know. Like I said, I'm not going to go into too much detail just for your sake, if nothing else. But it's kind of like a sequel, but also not to the movie. It's like kind of like an alternate telling, but it's also a sequel.
Yeah, that seems right on par for Scott Pilgrim, honestly.
Yeah, it's really cool. But at the same time, like there's a lot of weird, like some of the references don't make sense because they're still like doing things like they still have the video stores and they still have like VHS tapes and like flip phones and all this other stuff. But then at one point, Scott makes a Detective Pikachu reference.
Yeah, they're like incorporating new stuff, but also trying to keep all the old jokes at the same time.
Yeah, I will say the soundtrack for both the movie and the show are on point.
Yeah, they did a really good job fitting that like style that they were going for. Like
Mm-hmm.
one of my favorite scenes in the film, which is completely different than in the books, because the books it's honestly not that interesting of a fight. Is the fight against the twins, where it's like this fucking like bass battle or like rock battle.
Yeah, and it's like they summon familiars that are fighting.
Yeah, it's like the movie does it so much better than in the books. Like the books is just kind of like, oh, they're at a party. Scott wins.
I don't even remember the book version of it.
Yeah, it's one of the more rushed. Volume 5, honestly, is the most rushed out of the 6 volumes. Like it just kind of like it happens, and you're like, oh, cool.
Mm.
Like, especially because 4 ended on such a good note.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I remember from the comics that I liked a lot was that throughout the course of the whole thing, it seemed like Scott kind of like found closure with a lot of his exes throughout like along the way. Like he and Kim had like
Yeah,
their whole thing, and then he worked everything out with Knives like later on. And
kind of with Envy, sort of. It's unclear.
yeah, I don't remember how that went in the comics. I know the movie kind of gave him some closure on that whole thing.
In the comics, they have a decent like send off after like Todd goes away and the uh, robot drummer goes away after they disappear. She kind of has some closure where she goes off on her own, and it's like, oh, good, she's gone. She's doing her own thing. But then she comes back at the end as like Gideon's like new girlfriend, kind of,
Mm-hmm.
sort of. And she's
Didn't
most
Todd cheat on her?
yeah with the drummer, and that's part of how they that's part of how that whole band falls apart.
Yeah,
But Todd Ingram was kind of a dick to begin with.
yeah, he's a cocky cock.
Well, I mean, it's like his whole thing was like how he proclaimed his love for Ramona was he flew up into the sky and blew a hole in the moon.
Yeah,
Then he did the same exact thing for Envy and just did the hole right next to the other one, and she didn't question why is there a hole there already.
is that a Hancock reference?
I don't know, to be honest, because I'm not really familiar with Hancock.
It was the one where Will Smith was like a superhero,
I've never seen it,
but he
so
was all. It's worth a watch.
I'll have to look into it.
But yeah, and I will say one thing about the movie is more so than the comics or the new show, the movies like comedic points are like they hit every time for me. Like this is like one of the ultimate comedy movies for me personally. Like all the jokes hit for me. Even it's been 10 years since the first time I watched it, and I watched it early. No, I watched it yesterday, and I was still like laughing to myself the whole time watching it.
Yeah, it's got some good like writing, like notes and stuff. Like, that's the thing about Edgar Wright is he always does really good films. I think the problem is just no one ever goes to see them.
Yeah. Well, it's just that style of comedy is just right up my alley. Like I love that that casual kind of comedy, you know?
Yeah,
Um
like in book 6, there's like a great scene where it's right after Scott dies
mhm.
for like 5 minutes, and the whole time it's like you see like the shocked reaction from like all the people at the because he gets stabbed through the heart at a nightclub that Gideon's hosting, and like everyone that he knows is there, and they're all shocked. Um, and then of course he uses that extra life he had to come back. But like
Mhm.
one of my favorite background scenes is you see Stacy on the phone, and her little thing is she's like, "Never mind, mom, he's alive." It's like false alarm.
There's a similar scene in the new show with Stacy.
She's pretty funny because she's just like sarcastic in the background. She's like the sensible child in that family.
Yeah. Every family's gonna have one.
And then there's young Neil. He's just there because he looks like Scott.
Yeah. I like young Neil.
He's funny in the books. He's kind of an asshole, but it makes sense because like he's literally just no one knows who he is. Everyone just calls him young Neil, and he gets kind of treated like crap until like the final the final book where he's just referred to as Neil, and it makes his
Yeah,
day. It's the
yeah.
best day of his life.
He graduates to Neil.
Yeah, I think it's literally like the capture's like the best day of his life, which is funny. That whole there's the subtle arcs all the characters get in. The one thing that the book does the best is like the arcs that every character gets, because the movie, unfortunately, a lot of characters kind of got pushed to the back just out of necessity and filling like an entire is trying to keep it in a film length, because like the entire arc involving Scott and Kim's childhood friend, Lisa, I think's her name, right?
I think so. She's only referenced once, I think, in the movie.
Yeah, and she doesn't appear at all. She was like the main center of excuse me, book 4. I'm forgetting her name because I'm terrible at remembering names. It's gonna bug me now if I can't figure it out. Yeah, her name is Lisa. That's what it was.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because I know that at one point, did Scott date her too, or have a thing with her?
No, so she had a thing for him, but they never dated.
Okay, so because they reference it in passing in the movie, but they never show her.
Yeah, that entire arc was written out of the film, which kind of sucks, because it's that her and most of her arc is in book 4, and a lot of book 4 was just completely ignored for the movie, but it was mostly a timing thing.
Yeah, I definitely would like it because I know like the creator of the new series said that he doesn't have any intention of making any more, but I would love to have like an actual like 1-to-1 adaptation of the comics in like that exact style with the same cast and the same like style.
Yeah, it'd be nice, just because like the problem with the series to me is like that reading comics isn't for everybody. And there really isn't a great way to, if you don't like to read comics, there's no real good way to like truly experience the series for what it is,
right,
in its most original form. There's our friend the car.
Yep.
Yeah, it's funny though, because like there's, out of the 4 different mediums that the series has come through, all of them are good. Like there isn't like a one that's bad by any means.
No, not at all. Absolutely. Like I like just the past couple of days, like I said, I've watched the new movie, or I watched the movie, and then I watched the new show right after. And I was playing the game throughout the whole week, and I've been immensely enjoying all of them. And I just watched the new show last week, and I've just rewatched it again, and I've just as much enjoyment out of it.
Yeah, if I wasn't like marathoning, like my anime backlog wasn't so freaking full, I would have watched it by now. But I'm like, Rurouni Kenshin's currently on the slot, and then I have to watch Attack on Titan next because it's done. So,
well, I mean, the dub for the final episode hasn't come out yet, so you have
yeah,
a little bit of time for that.
By the time I get there, it'll be out.
That's true, especially if you're also watching Kenshin and whatever else. At least Scott Pilgrim is only 8 episodes, though.
True. I also got to catch up on Spy Family and Jujutsu Kaisen.
Yeah, I'm behind on both.
Yeah, I haven't had time to do anything lately.
I feel you. I've just been trying to catch up on all these other shows that I like either started like when they first came out and then never caught up with, or just stuff that I've missed along the way in general.
Yeah, it's tough too, because it's like right at the end of the year, so like we're trying to like catch up on everything right now.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff that's going to be coming out like over the next couple months. Like the live action Yu Hakusho is going to be soon, and I think the Avatar comes out in the next couple months.
Yeah, I'm still not sure how I feel about that one, to be honest.
Well, the fact that the original creators left the project is definitely concerning.
Yeah, they left the project, and they apparently didn't have a lot of influence on the movie either. So,
yeah, well, the movie was a flop.
The movie was the Last Airbender movie is its own special, like, kind of bad.
And it's a Shyamalan movie too. Like,
well, I mean, was in the middle of like probably one of the lowest streaks of his entire careers at the time.
true. I mean, even there's the fact that he picked up a live action adaptation of like a cartoon. That alone kind of tells you where he was at the time.
Yeah, the one scene from that movie that I'll never forget, just for how bad it was compared to the original,
Was
was
it the earthbending scene?
well, not just the earthbending itself, but the entire concept of what was happening there. Where like they were that was an adaptation of like the prison ship episode.
Yeah.
And the whole point of the prison ship was they were on a metal ship that no one could bend, because at the time metal bending wasn't a thing yet, and they were trapped on this ship and basically isolated. And then the movie is like they're in a fucking open field surrounded by earth. It's like, this doesn't work.
Yeah, and then the them doing that earthbending scene where they're all, I don't know, it must have been like 20 seconds, 30 seconds of them all doing all these complicated like motions and movements and stuff like that, and then one rock
Tiny little
comes
pebble
up.
goes
It's
by.
like there's like 12 earthbenders all doing it at once, and there's one pebble that goes.
There's 12
so earthbending sucks in this movie.
There's 12 earthbenders doing an interpretive dance, and then a tiny rock flies by. It's great.
Yeah, but we should save this conversation for when we eventually get to that movie, because I'm sure it'll come eventually.
Yeah, at some point. I just always remember that scene. Like, what the fuck is
this? That's the one that stands out in my mind, man, and I'll never get it out, no matter how hard I try.
Well, I think of that, and then I think of the screaming man in the Southern Water Tribe, or is it the North? No, the Northern Water Tribe. The guy when the war starts and he just starts screaming up on the thing, and it's like, yep.
Yeah, I checked out long before that part. I don't remember that part.
Yeah. But back to Scott Pilgrim. Geez, I'm trying to think what else is there to say, because surprisingly, it's not a huge series in itself.
No, there's really not like a super lot to it. I mean, obviously, like I said before, like they do pack a lot into those 6 volumes, and the movie does a really good job of adapting a lot of it in the runtime it has. But I mean, it's pretty straightforward for the most part.
Yeah, the basic plot is very simple. It's mostly like the background gags and like the scenery stuff that actually makes it like what it is. Because like if you took away all the humor and the gags, the plot itself is incredibly basic.
Oh, it's super simple. It's basically like your it's like your old school like Kung Fu Tower kind of situation.
Basically, well, it's basically like an old beat 'em up, like Double Dragon or River City Ransom from back in the day.
Yeah. I will say though, like going back from when I first watched the movie up until now, I get a lot more of the jokes and references that I did the first time I watched it. Like when I was watching the movie yesterday, and they did that whole scene where Scott's just like, "Oh, check it out! I learned how to do the bass line for Final Fantasy 2." I'm like, "Hey, I'm playing that game right now. I understand this one now."
Yeah, which is as a bass player myself, that is like such an easy line to figure out, because it's literally just like like it's like the easiest thing ever.
For real.
Which that's another great joke too, is like during the when like Sex Bomb is going through their weird like recording an album phase, which is I think an entire joke on like how bands fall apart basically. Yeah. They're recording they're legit recording the album it's mostly during volume 5, and there's like a scene where like Scott does his bass parts, and the producer Joseph, who later becomes Steven Still's boyfriend, he's literally like, all right, those sucked, I'll just redub them later. In the studio on my own.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because the whole running joke.
And there was this one joke that I wanted to point out from the new show, is that there was a scene, the scene where Scott approaches Ramona at the party. Like, you know how in the movie he's trying to do like the whole Pac-Man fun fact thing with her. In the new show, he's talking about Sonic the Hedgehog. He's like, hey, back in the 90s, there was 2 Sonic cartoons going on at the same time. One was like dark and edgy, and the other one was like a comedy about chili dogs. And he's like, and the funny thing is the same guy was playing Sonic in both shows. And he's like, isn't that wild? Same actor playing 2 versions of the same character. And that was just like a very meta joke because Michael Cera is playing Scott Pilgrim in this new thing, and they are wildly different between the movie and the new show. So it's just one of those funny little things that I was laughing to myself about.
Yeah, that is a pretty good meta joke, honestly. Another one that I really like too is in the game. There's a lot of like other references they throw in that aren't like in the books or the movie. One of my favorites is in the first level of the game. You can find like a secret item shop that Wallace runs. It's like Wallace's mystery shop or whatever.
Oh yeah,
and the items he sells there are my favorite because they are like all video game references. Like, so one of the items is called Speedy the Porcupine.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Bionic Arm, which I think is Bionic Commando. Mm-hmm. And then the best one is the Never Ending Fantasy.
What is that supposed to be? A never ending story?
No, Final Fantasy, but get it, never ending.
Oh, all right, I get it. That's good.
That one just like got me the best because that is true. It's like Final Fantasy, and there's 16 of them.
Yeah, no shit. And that's just the main series.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just I saw that one and I went, that's good. Like, I get that joke.
Yeah, that's pretty great.
Yeah, there's a ton of stuff with like, it is literally a series meant for nerds, basically.
Oh yeah, big time. I think that's part of the reason why the comedy hits so well for me. And like I said before, like that kind of casual, dry humor is just right up my alley.
It's also, I think, part of the reason why.
That's why I. Okay.
I was just gonna say it's partially, I think, part of the reason too why I don't think anyone went to see it because it was just such a bizarre concept.
Oh yeah, like the whole thing is bizarre, and it's such a hard movie to follow the first time if you don't know what you're getting into. Like,
yeah, I mean, even
I've tried showing it to people a bunch of times throughout the years.
Yeah, because like even the books are hard to follow. Like, and that's not a dig. I mean, the whole point is that they're hard to follow because the reveal at the end, like when everything gets explained, it makes so much more sense. But
oh yeah. Remind me because I forget. Was there like a weird like cosmic? Because I know like they played a lot more with the subspace highways and stuff like that in the comics. What was there some sort of like alternate like dimension plane or something at the end of the comics? I feel like I remember something like that, or something with the bag. The handbag had something to do with it.
Well, because Ramona had a subspace handbag, which was literally just it was essentially like an infinite storage like container, essentially that like, well, basically
the bag of holding.
The bag was a portal to subspace, and Ramona could just control like. Ramona has like some like minor control over subspace because she's an Amazon delivery girl. It makes sense in context. And actually, going back, it's one of my favorite like jokes because it's super relatable. Is Scott's trying to meet Ramona again after the party, and he knows she's an Amazon delivery girl, so he buys some stupid shit on Amazon that he doesn't even want, and he then just like sits at the door like waiting every day, and it's like that's relatable.
Yep.
Like whenever you buy something, you just sit there waiting for it to show up.
You know what I liked as a stupid little reference is instead of being an Amazon delivery girl in the new show, she delivers Netflix DVDs.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, that's just like one of those stupid like, hey, guess who made this show?
You remember we used to do DVDs?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but going back to subspace, so it's like the comic ends very ambiguously, where basically Scott and Ramona decide to give it another shot, and then it basically ends with them going into subspace, and it kind of just leaves it on like a maybe kind of we don't know what's happening.
Yeah, they kind of play with that a little bit more in the new show.
Yeah, because the way subspace works is never really explained. Because like the subspace highway that Ramona uses to get like from place to place literally goes through Scott's head.
Yeah, which is why he was dreaming about her, right?
Yeah, because he's having that infamous dream where he's like, "I'm so alone," and she's just like, "Shut the hell up" as she drives by.
Yeah, right.
And I remember because then he's got another weird one where he's like in like Zelda world, and she's like, "What the hell are you doing right now?" Like,
And that's one of my favorite jokes. Sorry.
No, go on.
I was gonna say one of my favorite jokes in the movie is like when Knives first shows up to watch the band practice, and she like looks at young Neil. She's like, "What do you play?" He goes, "Oof, Zelda, Tetris." It's kind of a loaded question. Like,
Yeah, yeah, that's good humor. Like that, just like it really appeals to like one specific like subset of people.
yeah, but it's I don't know. It's such a good movie. It's one of those ones that like I could watch that movie over and over.
I gotta sit down and watch it again at some point. Honestly, I gotta reread the comics again too because it's been a couple of years since I last like sat down and read them like
You're gonna go.
fully.
You gonna go on a pilgrim binge and do the comics, movie, and the new show all at once?
Maybe after I finish my Rurouni Kenshin binge.
Fair enough. I mean, once you finish the Kyoto arc, you really don't have. I mean, you can keep watching if you want to, but that's the point where all the canon stuff stops is after that. So
Yeah, I mean,
that's your call.
I watched all of Shippuden, so I might as well. I've been through worse,
That's fair.
and I have the full manga now, so I should probably read that at some point too,
Yeah.
because apparently that's the best version of everything. But
Yeah. I got the next couple of Visbis, so I have like up to 4. I was trying to find my first volume of it. I can't fucking find it anywhere. I have no idea where it went. So now I'm like, what the hell? Like I just ordered the next couple and I can't even start it.
yeah, excuse me. Oh, jeez.
Yeah, because I just happened to get a really good deal on those couples. So I was like, oh fuck, I can't pass it up for $10 each.
Yeah, I didn't go for the Viz Bigs. I went for the about 3-in-1s, which aren't as nice, but they do the job.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I have the option for the Viz Bigs or like the leather bounds or something like that, I always go for those because it's just I don't know. I know I don't really have much for shelving at the moment, but once I have my personal library, it's gonna look real nice on the shelf.
Yeah. No, the only Viz Bigs I have in full are the full Inuyasha set.
I have the Dragon Ball ones.
I have the first volume of Dragon Ball and the first volume of Dragon Ball Z, just because they were on sale.
You know what really bugs me about the Dragon Ball ones is
What?
oh yeah. Um But what really bugs me about my Dragon Ball ones is, so obviously in America they separated Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z in the manga, even though in Japan there
It's
is no
been
separation
the
between the
same
two.
thing.
So in the Visbigs they have the separation, and the very last Dragon Ball Visbig is a 4-in-1 instead of a 3-in-1
Yeah,
because the
that's
amount. But because the total volumes of the Dragon Ball manga in Japan is 42, the last Dragon Ball Z is a 2-in-1.
okay.
So it's
Jesus.
like if you hadn't split it up, it would have just been straight 3-in-1s the whole way.
Yep. Yeah. Excuse me. Because the last 2 Inuyashas are 4-in-1s.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, because I guess they would rather do 2 4-in-1s than 1 2-in-1 at the end.
Yeah, it would be cheaper to print it that way.
Yeah, and I think the Rurouni Kenshins, the 3-in-1s I have, I think the last one is a 4-in-1 as well.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get the rest of those soon. Well, as soon as I can. You know, kids come first this time of year.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. Family is the big one.
Yep.
Yeah, other than that, though, I think we've pretty much covered all of Scott Pilgrim. I'm looking forward to checking out the anime.
Yeah,
Pretty soon.
we'll have to do a follow-up episode. I thought we would be I assumed you had already watched it. So I was all prepared to go into the new show and
Yeah, unfortunately, scheduling just I didn't even think about it at the time. I figured we would cover the. I honestly thought we'd have more to say about the books, but then I realized getting through this, it's like there's not a whole lot to say because it's pretty simple in all honesty.
yeah, well if I had the books, I would have reread them in preparation. I probably would have had more to say about them, but like I said, it's been 2 years since I read them.
Mm.
And yeah, there's so much going on, and then you get the facts from the books and the facts from the movies muddled up, and you tend to forget things.
Yeah, that's true. And, excuse me. And especially when it's a series that's mostly based around its like jokes.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Oh, we didn't even
That's why
bring up.
like a lot of. Hmm?
I was gonna say we didn't even bring up how like one of Ramona's evil exes is a girl.
Oh yeah, that whole bit. Well, I mean, I mentioned her at one point just
That's like
because of
one of
the
my.
actor.
It's one of my favorite like meta jokes. Is like in the comics is like when Scott finds out, he like immediately gets all happy. He's like, "You had a sexy phase," and it's like that's a joke that like only some people are gonna get.
For real. And then was the whole part where he's having that talk with Wallace. He's just like, you're gonna have to say the word, and he's just, I'm in lesbians with you.
Yeah, the L word,
Yeah,
lesbian.
the L word, lesbians.
It's like because you
Not a
realize
trick questions, yeah.
because Scott literally has the mentality of a child. Sometimes it's great.
Yeah, it's part of what I love about the series. Is it's just the stupid jokes like that, like shows or a series rather like Scott Pilgrim, and then like Arrested Development, Red versus Blue, like that kind of very casual comedy, like banter stuff, and yeah, I don't know, that stuff just tickles me in a way that nothing else does.
Yeah. Excuse me. Like I always remember like the scene where Roxy first appears and Scott like doesn't know who she is yet. He immediately like she tries to ninja attack him and uh he basically punches her like mid like attack. And then like he doesn't realize it's a girl at first. Then like it cuts to her like on the ground in pain and she's like, "You dick, you punched me in the boob."
Yeah.
It's
And
like
then like her cutout line is just like, next time I'll be deadly serious next time. Like that sort of stupid, like I didn't think this line through kind of jokes. Like I just love that shit. It's super funny to me.
there's another good one at the end too where like so at one point Scott goes through a lot of jobs in this series. One of them is he's like a busboy at like this like vegetarian restaurant. And throughout the series, I think he gets fired twice, but they let him back because they like him or whatever. Because one of the times he gets fired is because he gets into a fight. Well, he doesn't get into a fight with Roxy. Ramona gets into a fight with Roxy, and Scott literally gets inside the subspace bag,
Oh
which
yeah.
is super goofy. Um, and then it after that, like my favorite joke is right at the end where like so the only reason he has the job is because Steven Stills also works there. Um, at the end, he gets promoted to prep chef or prep cook,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like doing some elaborate cooking thing, and he like tries to like flip the food in the pan, and it just lands on the floor, and they both just stare at it for like a few minutes, and then Steven still goes, "All right, they're getting a salad."
Yeah.
It's like it's just like dumb humor like that. That's like you wouldn't think it's funny, but just like the way it's presented, you're like, this is great.
Oh, you know my favorite joke in the whole movie is the scene where Knives is like knocking at their door. Wallace answers it, and she's like, "Oh, is Scott here?" And then you just see him in the background jump out the window. He's like, "You know what? Crash. He just left."
Yeah, there's just so
Like,
many.
oh my god, because it had been a few years until I think it was a couple years ago was the first time I had watched it in like 5 or 6 years, and I'd totally forgotten about a lot of that movie. And when I saw that one scene, I'd lost my shit. I was dying laughing.
Yeah, it's such a smartly written like series.
Yeah, whoever wrote the script for that movie had to have been doing drugs to fucking put that together.
I'm sure it was a combination of Brian Lee O'Malley and Edgar Wright, I believe. I want to say. I'm not sure. Uh, Screenplay by Edgar Wright and some other guy. So Edgar Wright definitely was partially writing it.
Well, I'm gonna have to look into both of those guys and see what other kind of stuff they've made individually or together or whatever. Because
You'll look
well,
through.
whoever was writing the jokes definitely had me as their target audience.
Yeah, I guarantee you'll look through Edgar Wright's directing like history, and you've probably at least seen like some of his work at one point or another.
Hmm.
I know he did a Shaun of the Dead. That was like one of his big ones.
Oh, okay. That's a big one in our family. We
Yeah.
actually watched that with Xander for the first time this Halloween season.
Oh yeah. Nice.
He loved it.
He also wrote the screenplay for Ant-Man before like he ended up leaving the project because it was stuck in like limbo for years. But
Did they end up using what he wrote for that?
part of it, anyways. I know Peyton Reed finished the film, but
that's one of the few MCU movies I did see, and I enjoyed it a lot. So that makes
I
sense.
love Ant-Man's one of my favorites. Although I heard the third one kind of sucks, but I haven't given a shit about a Marvel movie since Endgame. So,
I mean, to be honest, I never really gave a shit about Marvel.
Yeah, I went through that phase where I watched all of them because they were big, and then like Endgame was so hyped up, and because I remember like you couldn't go on the internet for like a month because there were spoilers everywhere.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was gonna. It was part of my plan after I got Disney Plus that I was gonna go through all the Marvel movies in order and try to catch up. I think it was mostly because I wanted to watch the new Spider-Man movie. But
the one with the Tobey Maguire and
yeah, they brought back the old guys.
That was the last Marvel movie I've seen.
But like even going to the first of the new Spider-Man movies, even that, like you start that up and it's like, oh, we're cleaning up the mess from the last movie, and it's like, well, shit, like I have no idea what happened there. So
yeah, that's the problem with these connected universe films.
So I watched phase 1 and then I lost Wi-Fi. That was during that period where we did that podcast where I didn't have Wi-Fi, and I just never went back to it.
That's that's fair. Excuse me. Yeah. Other than that, though, like I guess closing thoughts on Scott Pilgrim.
It's definitely made for people like me.
Yeah,
I give the movie 10 out of 10.
I'd give the series as a whole a strong like 9 out of 10. Some things are better than others. Like I'd say, if you've never seen anything Scott Pilgrim related, I'd probably say read the comics first, then watch the film. And if you like those, definitely then watch the anime. Because I feel like going into the film and then trying to read the books isn't always like the most is kind of counterintuitive at times, just because they're so differently toned.
Yeah, and I can honestly say if you're not into reading comics, if you just want to do the movie and then the show, that's perfectly acceptable too. Because honestly, even though like the style and everything feels a lot like the comics, the new show definitely, I feel like it was written as a sequel to the movie rather than the comics.
Yeah, no, and you can tell that especially with all the actors and stuff.
Yeah, and even like the way that the actors do their characters is even different from the way they did it in the movie. Like obviously Michael Cera's portrayal of Scott is very different. And I think one of the only ones that's like actually almost exactly the same is Chris Evans, because he's doing the cool guy voice the whole time.
Well, Chris Evans is also just Chris Evans.
Yeah.
I mean, it is, you got to think though, like that movie came out in 2010. It's been over 10 years. So
yeah, which actually works. Well, I won't say it, but that kind of works with the show, the amount of time that it's been.
Yeah, honestly. But yeah, I mean, definitely a heavily recommended series, one that I still think holds up to this day.
For sure.
If you're not into super nerdy culture though, it's probably not going to be for you, I will say.
If you don't like if you don't like watching movies or shows that have a lot of references to other stuff, then it's probably not for you.
If you don't like,
it does a lot of reference humor.
If you don't like dumb humor, you're probably not going to like this series.
Yeah. But
yeah, anyways,
I definitely recommend it.
Yeah, no, for sure. There's a reason why it's still around to this day. Like it is stuck. There's a reason why there was a devout following of people who wanted the video game to come back. But yeah. Other than that though, pretty much wraps this one up. I think next week we were going to try and do another movie review. So tune in for that one. And until next time, guys, this has been Geek Addicts. You can find Geek Addicts on all the podcasting platforms. You can find all of our links at the Linktree / the Barber Games. And if you'd like to join our Discord server, it is the GNC Podcast Network. It's a pretty fun place. You can find all the info on GNC, Geek Addicts, 3DO Experience. Want to talk gaming, anime, or just anything, really. And other than that, guys, we will see you all next time.
Have a good one.